Namaskar. Hello and welcome to P Guru's channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Today's Daily Global Insights episode 405, and joining me is my co-host Sridhar Chityalaji. Sridharji, namaskar and welcome to P Guru's channel.
Namaskar. Good morning to everybody on this the day after the State of the Union, and very happy to be here with Sri Ji to talk all about the good things that's going on in the United States and the world.
And first off, the Sri Lankan Prime Minister has thanked India and said that India is a true friend. Sridharji, this came about after a lot of initiatives that India has undertaken to help its younger brother, Sri Lanka. Sir, where did this start and how do things stand now?
Well, I think the first and foremost is that they had a very significant cash crunch and the FX reserves issue from the ability to import. So I think India provided the cash and the cushion that was needed, or the buffer. So that really helped Sri Lanka to tide over that specific issue and to make sure that there was continuous flow of goods. I think the second is that they backed and supported and to be the guarantor for the IMF loan. I think those two incidents, in conjunction with helping some of the domestic issues around the energy, especially for the consumer fuel that is consumed, seems to have helped Sri Lanka to weather the storm, at least for the time being, which is being acknowledged. I think within the context of what's going on in the world, this is a very telling statement by the Sri Lankan Prime Minister.
Thank you, sir. And now let's take a quick look at the State of the Union address. President Biden, as expected, touted that economy is doing well under him, excellent foreign policy, but for some reason he doesn't seem to have touched upon the BalloonGate, sir.
Well, I think that to be fair to him, he did make a very important statement, which is to say that we will protect the sovereignty of United States and our borders at all costs. So I ordered the balloon to be shot down. Unfortunately, he didn't add the word after it has well traveled and across the United States from West Coast, and it was only shot when it was around Carolinas. He didn't add that, but anyway, to his credit, at least he said he ordered the balloon to be shot down. Overall, I think that when you look at it, he has to speak what he has to speak. But when we look at the overarching scheme of things, United States is in an absolute mess right now on all fronts, and we'll cover some of these as we go through the program.
Thank you so much, sir. These are just like the headlines. The Federal Reserve may pause rate increases, which means perhaps the quantum will be smaller and they'll be perhaps more spread out a little bit more. That's how I read it. Sridharji, they have said now that the disinflationary measures are beginning to take effect. See, there is an interesting conundrum here. High tech is losing jobs, very high paying jobs, whereas the job market seems to be thriving. What is this dichotomy? How can we explain this, sir?
There are three ways by which you can explain, Sriji. I think we covered some of this. Just to give you a headline, the participation rate is relatively less because they are still on a lot of social security benefits that is flowing through the system. So that's number one. Number two is, so therefore there's limited workforce coming back post-COVID. And so therefore there's no unemployment claims because of the social security flowing through. So limited people coming back to take up the jobs. That's what you're seeing in terms of the unemployment rate. The third, which is the question that you pointed out to, technology companies laying off is not material within the context of the employment market. The employment market, the materiality comes from where? Travel and hospitality. That's regained momentum. Second, the healthcare industry, which is one of the big employers, that's kind of regained momentum. Is obviously energy sector. That's you can see profits coming out like nobody's business from the big oil companies. So there is the third segment. I think the fourth, when you look at the travel industry also is regaining momentum with the travel sector kind of picking up. So this is where you are seeing the job growth coming from. So the tech people, for example, whichever way you add, when you take million people employed by Amazon and, get rid of 10,000 people, it's not kind of material. Similarly, many of these tech companies which expected business normalcy are laying off because they're all over recruited during the COVID period. So this is how I would respond to your question, Sriji.
Thank you, sir. And now let's take a look at one of the big items, which is the balloon gate. All these balloons up in the sky, it appears to represent a watershed moment in the world politics. What exactly is China up to? While it is floating trial balloons or maybe real balloons, what exactly is it doing in its own backyard? Sridharji, please give us a 360-degree view of where you see this thing headed. And I'm not going to interrupt you. You have the field, sir.
Well, I think thank you so much for setting the context. I think what we are witnessing, is it a watershed moment? Obviously, the answer is yes, it is a watershed moment, whether China wants to accept or deny. United States has briefed more than 40 nations, and now every average American citizen knows that there was a balloon going over and going across United States and traversing a path crossing very sensitive military installations and locations, and United States kept quiet, posing great security threat to the nation in terms of the intelligence gathering. So where is this going? I think this has become a new method of spying across the United States. It's no more cyber warfare. It is no more spies being implanted. It is no more the surrogates or advocates, but it is about navigation of these balloons across and knowing what exactly is happening across the terrain of United States. So it clearly opens up a new frontier in terms of the spying and where this is heading. And is United States capable of handling this situation? Based on all the statements that are coming out, it doesn't seem to be the case, Sriji. To give you an example, the Chinese continue to deny that it has violated the sovereign state of borders of a nation, number one. Number two, they continue to claim that it is basically a research balloon. If it is a research balloon, why is it going across Montana and very sensitive areas, capturing data about the installations? They would not even stop there. They think that United States is engaged in a game of brinkmanship by highlighting this to the world. And now they're saying that United States has no right to shoot down this balloon because it is not its asset. For a minute, forgetting that it is not in its waters. It was not shot within the sovereign boundary of China. So when you make these kinds of statements, unless you are a dumbfounded Chinese supporter, you know that you are trying your best to cover your tracks when the truth is contradictory.
Well, this is a new dimension to intelligence gathering, as Sridharji rightly put it. How will the world react to this? And you know that copycats are going to start. Other countries will start doing the same thing. And where will all this lead up to? Are we going to have a lot of debris falling on our heads all the time? Or are we going to be spied upon? Isn't it enough now that many of the conversations that get recorded on StreamYard, when we have high value guests, it gets disrupted? Sridharji, Elmer's seldom do Elmer's interviews go clean, sir. It doesn't matter where he is, whether it is US, Boston, DC, LA, Las Vegas, anywhere he is, even in Tokyo. It's always there. Somehow they seem to be able to disrupt it. So what I am trying to say is that this snooping, this spying, this trying to see what the other person is up to has reached a crescendo right now. And really, what are you getting? That's my question. Anyway, we'll wait and see how this plays out. Sridharji, let's take a look at all the different things happening in the House committees. We know that when Ilhan Omar got booted out, that's the word that they used, there was a ruckus. I mean, histrionics doesn't even begin to capture the kind of statements that AOC made or Rashida Tlaib made, as if the world was falling on their heads. And these things are now being repeated in the Indian parliament. There's a lady called Mahua Maitra. She's screaming. I mean, what is this thing, sir? They don't seem to understand that as a member of house, you need to show some maturity.
Yeah, I think the first and foremost is, where does your patriotism lie? Is patriotism compromisable to your political aspirations, or your national integrity and national security, and the sovereignty of the nation far more important? So before we transcend to some of the things that she is alluding to, so let me just, couple of more observations. One observation. This is a strategic consequence to United States. The Army General. Let me tell you what his name is. 1 minute. Now he says that there is a strategic gap in domain expertise. Strategic gap in domain expertise of identifying the balloon. So he is basically conceding that they couldn't detect this balloon. So therefore now they are, and this gap is being addressed. That probably, in fact, I'll go further basically to say they mistook some of these past incidents and balloons to be unidentified flying objects, white specks, unidentified flying objects. This is the level of gap that seems to be prevalent, as admitted by a very senior defense official in his briefing. It's frightening, Sriji, in terms of this specific admission. Where did this come from? This came from his statement that there were several balloons, at least 3 balloons that flew over during the Trump administration, and they couldn't report it because they had a strategic gap in the domain. They mistook it for unidentified objects. Then why did they not tell Mark Esper, who was the defense secretary, Mike Pompeo, who was the state secretary, John Bolton, who was the national security advisor, Vice President Mike Pence? No, they didn't feel that it is appropriate to tell these people what they were seeing, right? And even this incident, the Biden administration officials withstood this or withheld this information for the fear of political consequences. So first, they're saying they had a problem in tracking and identifying. Second, they chose at their own discretion not to inform the appropriate officials. And third, they felt that they would be politically kind of be compromised if they released this information. So this is far more problematic for United States. And this is the reason why we are transitioning to the next topic as to what the House is doing. Imagine if the House was opposite in the control of the Democrats, we would be sleeping right now. And this is one of the reasons why Sriji keeps on bringing about the ouster of Ilhan Omar. All these things had happened, but nothing kind of brought to the foray by the Foreign Relations Committee. So what is the House Committee people doing? The House Committee people are now focusing their efforts on calling all security experts. Doesn't matter who it is. The first one is David Petraeus, who is going to be coming in and talking about what are all the major security risks that United States as a nation faces. And this is the issue that is going to be discussed from today, and they're going to call all officials, former national security officials, former defense officials, former head of the commands, etc., to get to understand what are the security risks that United States faces and whether there are any political compromises, including the Hunter-Biden relationship with China and what exactly was in that laptop. Is this constraining US ability to do intelligence gathering and protect itself?
Well, viewers, how many drones do you think have flown over across from Mexico into the United States territory? Want to take a guess? Over 10,000. 10,000. India surprises that, oh my God, 3 drones came across from Pakistan. 10,000 drones have come across over the United States-Mexico border, and no points for guessing what it contained. And now we have the fentanyl also perhaps going to be manufactured. Sir, this is a serious problem. And I think the Republican-controlled House has also expressed some concerns about this too.
Indeed. So now we go to the, I think Sriji touched on, where does it stop, this balloon? So the balloons and drone story seem to be going together. Remember, China has been accused on the fentanyl issue. Now, Mexican cartels are not going to get drone and use of drone technology without some kind of assistance. So this is again in the House. The Customs and Border Patrol officials in the hearings have tabled 12,000, between 10 to 12,000 drones flew across the southern border. And what were they doing? They could detect where the enforcement officials are, where the border patrol forces were, and what the strategic vulnerability points are, and how to navigate that and actually deliver this drugs across to the appropriate people. I'm told some of these drugs were even delivered in Vantage into the prisons of, within Texas, crisscrossing and, avoiding any kind of detection. So therefore, on the back of this balloon, you have these drone intrusions coming from right across the border. What else is SNAP? This is not something that Mr. Biden touched on. What Mr. Biden touched on was around granting immigration to all the illegals. That was his kind of focus, but not around what the strategic threats and what some of these drug issues is going to pose to the kids and to the crime across the country.
So, Sridharji, while we are on the topic of Biden, what was your takeaway from Sarah Huckabee's rebuttal of the SOTU?
Very simple. She said, people have to make a choice. It's their choice between going crazy to running a normal life. Now, when she says crazy, what does crazy mean? Dispensing money that we don't have by borrowing, number one. Number two, there's no enforceability of crime, and therefore going what you call weak and going soft on criminal matters, going soft on the immigration matters, trying to inculcate the educational system with this critical race theory and other kinds of things. And then, of course, you have this now, many Democratic-led states are talking about freely permitting sex conversion and being funded by the state without understanding the consequences. So what she is saying is this what United States want, to be a crazy country, or you want to restore normalcy and value? Well, this is, I think, in my view, it's a very appropriate kind of framework for people to make the decisions.
Sir, finally, your take on the balance. Who is having the upper hand in the GOP, Trump or DeSantis?
Well, I put my head out and I said the person who is going to be speaking was DeSantis. Well, Sarah Huckabee spoke, and that means that Trump is still holding his sway. McCarthy is a Trump man, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders is a Trump lady, and so therefore he still seems to be holding his sway, Shriji.
Yes, indeed. And she was a spokesperson for some amount of time during the Trump administration. I wasn't pulling your leg or anything like that, sir. I just wanted to state that this is where it appears to be right now. And with that, let's take a look again back at India. India has also raised by 25 basis points its internal bank lending rate. And India also has put up a new airbase in Koma in Ladakh. This is important, Sridharji, because we've been talking about how Daulat Beg Oldie, there was a series that I did, and now there's a new airfield also. What is the significance of this new airfield, sir?
This is the advanced landing and takeoff airfield. It is at the front end. So if, for example, Chinese are able to deploy and move their forces in the front line around the specific region, then India is well prepared with its ability to launch, at a rapid time frame, its air squadron. So it seems like what was missing was a former airfield with a squadron present. And I think one of the listeners rightly mentioned to me, it's all going to be in the comment section. I think it is the light combat Tejas aircraft, which are now fitted with BrahMos missiles. They will respond. So I think it's a great development. I think what is important to point out here is while India is watching and learning and not staying still as to what it is witnessing happening to the most advanced nation in the world, United States, to the actions being perpetuated by China. So India cannot stay what you call lull. India and Taiwan are the two strategic vulnerable points from the perspective of any offense and any attack that could come from China. So therefore, I think this is a very important development within the context of its preparedness.
Thank you, sir. And now let's take a quick look at what is happening in Europe/Asia. 7,200 plus killed in the earthquake. And we saw some graphic footage where multi-storied buildings were collapsing as the earth shook. Turkey as well as Syria are taking the brunt of this, and India has been sending supplies, and so have been many countries. Sridharji, at this point of time, the world comes together to try and help the countries which are flattened. And I still see some, pointless statements being made by the Turkish Premier Erdogan.
But Turkish President Erdogan is Erdogan, Sriji, so therefore there's nothing that we can do to stop him because he's got his own political agenda. But it doesn't mitigate the calamity that's. I'm also equally concerned about the southern Syria because it's like
Yes.
no
Yes.
man's land. Resources. It is a conflict between three different nations, or one is Turkey, one is Syria, and second, rebel-controlled areas, and then you have the Peshmergas. So therefore, you are, and how does relief and aid reach those places to rescue, especially children, women, and so on and so forth? So forgetting Erdogan, I think the world is trying to see what best it can do. I think India is also stepping up its effort in terms of search and rescue missions and medical supplies and search and rescue mission capabilities, etc. So it's good to see that the world coming together, notwithstanding Mr. Erdogan's utterances, Shilji.
And the Taiwan's Kuomintang leader is visiting China, but he says that he has no plans of talking or meeting with Xi Jinping. So there is a little bit of an undertext there. There's also a protocol. The leader of opposition will not go and meet a person who's in power. They are going to find somebody of their own level. No surprises there, Sridharji. But do you think Kuomintang as a philosophy has been opposed to CCP? This something very interesting there that I see, sir. I mean, these are two opposing ideologies. How come they are trying to come together?
I think it's political point scoring, Sriji. It's very similar to the political opportunism. That's number one. Number two, he is probably playing the script of Xi Jinping. And he probably is falling into the trap very similar to what was promised to Hong Kong and what actually turned out to be. So let's wait and see what comes out. My feeling is that he will have eventually some kind of a meeting with Mr. Xi Jinping, and Xi Jinping will give him a very good serving and give him an order, which is to say, you come here, I will tell you what you need to do if you want to get your power. So it's going to be very interesting to see what comes out, but I don't read much into his statement. It's just almost, as you rightly said, it's a bluff.
And lastly, Zelensky is going to be visiting United Kingdom, and this is the first time he's doing it after the conflict started. And Putin has been again saying that, well, US is reordering nuclear inspections, that's a no-go, and so on and so forth. Sir, in the region now, as you see it, and I see something, maybe I can ask you your thoughts. The Donbas region is still under the control of Russia. Ukraine fancies that it can recapture Crimea, which is where Putin is now saying, you don't dare touch that place. Is this probably going towards a situation where they may say, okay, I lose something, I win something, meaning like Ukraine gets back Crimea, but it has to cough up the Donbas region? I see something like that might happen. How do you see it, sir?
No, Vladimir Putin does not concede ground. I see Vladimir Putin telling Mr. Zelensky, I'm sparing your life. Crimea is mine. Donbass region is mine. If you're not careful, I'll take the south, the Kherson region, you'll be left with nothing. So you better concede and you hold on to what little remnants of Ukraine that you have, and you can't put, you want EU, go ahead and take it. You can't have NATO. You can't have monitoring and you can't have missiles. And if you try and do any of these things, I'll also take over your nuclear plant. So you'll be left with nothing. So therefore, that's the game Vladimir Putin is delivering to Zelensky. So there's no question. Crimea is very critical. That port is very critical to him in terms of the Black Sea, as well as his forward submarine forces to thwart any threats or to launch any attacks. There's no way Crimea is going back to Ukraine, and I think I'll be very lucky if he regains any of those positions, Sriji.
Well, we'll wait and see how it plays out. We have two different viewpoints here, and that's what you get. Both are reading the same tea leaves, and we are coming up with different conclusions. That's fine. Thank you so much, Sridharji, and we'll be back again on Friday. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click on the bell button for notifications. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening or have a wonderful day.